Good morning, and good afternoon, good evening, and welcome everyone to this third session of our joint certificate training program on transitioning to complex risk management and resilient urban futures, harnessing South-South cooperation and learning from COVID-19. This is the third session of this learning series of 4. And thank you for having joined in the past weeks, and we look forward for this session run by the PAHO, Pan American Health Organization, and the WHO World Health Organization today. I am Heini, Utunen, acting unit head of the Learning and Capacity Development Unit of the Health Emergencies Program of the World Health Organization in Geneva, Switzerland. But just exceptionally today, I am in Panama City for other training activities with colleagues in PAHO. It's nice to be here, and I would like to thank my colleague Anne-Sophie Allegre, who's helped to establish this session together with the colleagues from PAHO and WHO. Today's session is about health emergency and disaster risk management related to the resilient cities, and we will soon go through the arrangements for this session, but I will run now through some practical arrangements as a reminder how this joint certificate training program functions and how you will get your certificate and other details. And at this time, I would like to thank the organizations that we're collaborating with. It's the United Nations Office for South-South Cooperation and the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, who have kindly included us from the WHO and PAHO to this training program. And this is the third year of activities in this learning journey together, and really pleased to see so many participants joining today. First and foremost, let us remind how to function, how you can activate the interpretation. Today we have interpretation into Arabic, Chinese, French, Portuguese, and Spanish. And it will activate when you click the globe function in the lower corner of your Zoom screen. So you can choose the interpretation, and then also you can mute the original speaker so that you only hear the interpretation. And I would like to thank also the great team of interpreters we have today with us to provide in total to 6 languages this session. Today we mainly operate in English, so you might want to test that your interpretation tool works in the globe function as shown in the screen in the upper corner. This is where you need to click to get your interpretation working. Since this is a joint certificate program, you will be eligible to obtain a certificate of completion if you meet the course requirements, meaning you have attended 3 out of 4 of these events, and today is the 3rd one, and we'll also ask you to complete at the end the feedback survey, and also at the end there will be a test in which you have to score more than 80% of the results in order to be able to get the certificate from this program. The instructions are in the platform site that you all have obtained, that are also in the we can put it again on the chat function, so that you can get your information related to the certificate if you don't have it yet. We capture automatically the attendance and participation to this program, so that the system generates it for us. All the materials also for today are downloadable from the platform that supports this training program, and the link has been shared with you, and again we will share it again. When we've gone through the presentations, you can use the Q&A question and answer function on Zoom to ask your questions, and we'll collect them and organize them for the speakers of the session today. As for today, it's really a pleasure to have colleagues from the Pan American Health Organization and the World Health Organization's headquarters join this session, number 3, on whole of society and multi-sectoral, cross-sectoral approaches to all hazard health emergency preparedness in urban settings. This is quite a mouthful. We will be splitting it into the topics and themes as our distinguished colleagues, speakers here today will be presenting each and every one their distinct entry coming point to this topic. And without further ado, I would like to invite Dr. Celso Bambaren, the Chief of Country Health Emergency Preparedness and International Health Regulations Unit of the PAHO, Pan American Health Organization, to join for the opening remarks. Dr. Celso Bambaren, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Buenos días, buenas tardes y buenas noches. A nombre de la Organización Panamericana de la Salud, Organización Mundial de la Salud, deseo saludar a los participantes de este importante curso y a los ponentes que nos acompañan el día de hoy. En el 2021, la OMS publicó el marco para el fortalecimiento de la preparación para emergencias en salud en ciudades y entornos urbanos, que tiene como propósito facilitar el incremento de atención en estos espacios, reconociendo que tienen vulnerabilidades únicas, como las altas tasas de densidad poblacional, el abarrotado sistema de transporte público, la informalidad y la precariedad de las viviendas, especialmente en las áreas periurbanas, así como los déficits de agua, saneamiento e higiene. Ellos los hacen más vulnerables a los efectos catastróficos de las emergencias de salud y desastres, y pueden exacerbar la transmisión de las enfermedades, siendo frecuentemente la primera línea de respuesta, como lo ha demostrado la pandemia por la COVID-19 y los brotes de influenza, dengue, fiebre amarilla, ocurrido en los países de la región de las Américas. En este documento se incluyen, como alguna de las 8 líneas de trabajo claves, la coordinación multisectorial, la preparación ante el movimiento de poblaciones y el trabajo con el comercio, la industria y el negocio. La coordinación requiere de salud y otros sectores, como medio ambiente, infraestructura, planeamiento, transporte, protección civil y otros, así como de socios de la academia, organizaciones de la sociedad civil y del sector privado, de los niveles nacional, subnacional y local, para trabajar en forma articulada con las autoridades urbanas bajo el enfoque unitario de gobierno y sociedad, en la coordinación para la preparación y la construcción de la resiliencia. Como ejemplo de las interacciones entre sectores, se tienen las acciones con el sector responsable de salud animal para mitigar el riesgo de enfermedades zoonóticas, donde uno de estos ámbitos de trabajo son los mercados en las ciudades, con el sector transporte, seguridad y turismo para mitigar el riesgo asociado a los viajes durante emergencias, lo cual incluye los puntos de entrada. Cabe mencionar que el Reglamento Sanitario Internacional, RCI, incluye varias acciones como parte del trabajo de salud con otros sectores, que están vinculadas a la preparación y respuesta ante eventos generados por amenazas biológicas, químicas y radiológicas. También es importante reforzar la coordinación entre salud y los responsables de la planificación urbana, con la finalidad de incorporar estándares de ventilación, higiene y otros en el diseño y operación de las instalaciones urbanas y sitios de congregación de personas, para reducir el riesgo de propagación de enfermedades, lo cual se ha evidenciado es clave en emergencias de salud, como la pandemia COVID y otros tipos de problemas vinculados a virus respiratorios. Otro aspecto importante es la necesidad de coordinar la ubicación de las edificaciones en salud en zonas de bajo riesgo, ante eventos naturales, así como el acuerdo con las organizaciones comunales, sociedad civil, sector privado y otros, para la previsión de locales como hoteles, estadios y otros locales, para que sean utilizados como lugares de aislamiento, vacunación, cuarentena o sitios alternativas de atención médica, como parte de las estrategias para la ampliación de la capacidad de atención en situación de emergencias de salud y desastres. Como parte de la preparación ante el movimiento de la población, se remarcan las acciones de prevención ante brote de enfermedades transmitidas por vectores, como el dengue y otras arbovirosis, donde es fundamental coordinar los lineamientos para evitar la urbanización de zonas donde existe el vector y pueda generar brotes, o establecer directivas para evitar la generación de actividades que puedan ser criaderos de estos vectores cercanos a las zonas urbanas. La importancia de ello, por ejemplo, se ha evidenciado en las emergencias de salud asociadas al fenómeno del Niño. Los eventos masivos son una oportunidad para reforzar el trabajo coordinado entre salud y las organizaciones locales, públicas y privadas, para la planificación y organización de esos eventos. Ello con la finalidad de reducir el riesgo de brote de enfermedades o preparar al sector salud para atender emergencias debido a incidentes que ocurran durante la realización de estos eventos. La implementación de medidas de salud pública son una experiencia replicable para organizar eventos similares en el futuro. El trabajo con el comercio, industria y negocio pueden contribuir a reforzar la coordinación y compromiso de estos con los gobiernos nacionales para la preparación ante emergencias de salud, que incluyen ámbitos como la comunicación de riesgo, la gestión de riesgo en salud y seguridad del trabajo, la prevención de zoonosis, el manejo de alimentos, así como acuerdos para mantener la logística y la cadena de suministro, para la prestación continua de servicios esenciales, como por ejemplo, para suministros de insumos médicos. El trabajo en las ciudades y escenarios urbanos se enmarca en el marco de respuesta multiamenaza del sector salud que la OPS está impulsando en la región de las Américas, para mejorar la capacidad de los países para gestionar la respuesta a emergencias de salud y desastres de forma más eficiente y oportuna. Ello requiere el fortalecimiento de la coordinación para el desarrollo de elementos estratégicos y procedimientos operativos para la respuesta y recuperación temprana, basada en un enfoque multiamenaza, promoviendo una mejor utilización de los recursos disponibles y una mayor flexibilidad frente a cualquier tipo de evento. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Celso Bambaren, for your opening remarks, and really grateful to work with you, and thanks for your sharing of the vision and overall work in this area that you are also leading as a chief of this unit. With this opening note, we are going to get straight to the session today, and we have colleague to invite to speak first of the presenters, Dr. Kaivan Harbou, who's technical officer in the Disaster Risk Management and Resilience Unit of the World Health Organization's headquarters in Switzerland. And Kai has been working for 15 years in the area, out of that soon 10 years with WHO in all 3 levels of the organization. And prior taking this function, Kai used to run the WHO Emergencies sub-office in Cox's Bazar in the Rohingyas crisis, one of the world's largest refugee camp. And Kai has worked as a surgical resident at Yale School of Medicine and also at the German Red Cross. And we will hear on key concepts of health emergency and disaster risk management related to the resilient cities. So with this, Kai, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Heini, and thank you for the organizers for inviting me to participate in this training. Just to check that the slides are visible?
Yes, it's perfectly well.
Thank you, and I will give you a brief presentation on some of the key concepts of health emergency and disaster risk management related to the topic of today, the resilient cities. By way of the context, I think you have heard already a lot in the previous sessions, and also Dr. Celso really outlined well many of the complexities of this topic in his opening remarks. And of course, urbanization is one of the mega trends of our time, and urban areas, especially in low and middle income countries, are one of the main areas we have to focus in our effort to bring the risk management approach down to the subnational and community levels. And this is also reflected in the selection of targets of the Sendai framework and the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think you heard about the Sendai framework quite extensively in the previous session as well. And some of the main challenges for building risk management and resilience that need to be addressed in this context, and Dr. Celso also managed already quite a few, but some important others are around the unplanned urbanization, of course, the high population density and the often large number of population groups with very different vulnerabilities. And some of the key underlying principles to build resilience is the capacity of cities to implement risk-informed governance systems, in particular whole of society government systems, and I will go into more detail on that shortly, and conduct and implement strategic and long-term planning. And I will also briefly introduce some tools for that aspect. And of course, the other mega trend that we see in light of the pandemic and also disasters related to natural hazards is that countries and cities have to simultaneously deal with a large number of concurrent emergencies that affect the communities. And this is particularly important because these compounding emergencies can have exponential impacts, in particular on vulnerable populations that are affected disproportionately by the impact of these events. And this is why it's so important to prepare for the dual impact of disease outbreaks and other types of disasters, as well as for concurrent emergencies. Also, for example, in the setting of fragility and ongoing protracted humanitarian emergencies. And I think it's only reasonable to expect that this landscape of converging crisis will evolve further with the emerging risk with climate change that we see with climate-related disasters becoming more frequent and more intense, but also considering that climate emergencies contribute to other emergencies, for example, conflict, and in particular driving displacement of populations. And all of these aspects underscore the need to invest in emergency preparedness, addressing a broader scope of hazards by addressing underlying vulnerabilities of communities and following a multi-sectoral and whole of society approach, moving away from the focus on the reactive response to single events and single hazards. And to support this comprehensive approach to risk management, WHO has developed a health emergency and disaster risk management framework, which describes the core functions and components for ministries of health and other stakeholders to manage risks collectively at all levels of the health system, from the national to the local level. And this HEDRM framework brings together the IHR, the Sendai framework, Paris Agreement, and other regional and global policy frameworks towards the sustainable development goals, and provides a common language and a comprehensive approach that can be adapted and applied by all actors in health and also other sectors who are working to reduce health risks. And just to highlight that COVID, but also the recent climate change related emergencies that we have seen and continue to see today have shown us that we need to take action to better understand and manage systemic risks. It's clear that risks are highly integrated and complex in their potential for the magnitude of impact. And this is why WHO is promoting a risk-informed approach that requires a periodic and systematic assessment of risks to inform planning and evidence for strategies and policies. And to support this approach, WHO has developed the Strategic Toolkit for Assessing Risks, or STAR. And this tool provides a comprehensive and easy to use methodology to help national and subnational governments to conduct a strategic and evidence-based assessment of public health risks. And this resulting country risk profile as a output of this exercise guides the planning for and health system capacity building for emergency responses. And another important avenue to operationalize health EDRM at the national and subnational level through a multi-sectoral risk management approach is the development of an all-hazard national health sector emergency response plan. And this plan defines overall roles and responsibilities, systems, and mechanisms for initiating and managing a health emergency response. And WHO recently published guidance on this process and the recommended key components of such a plan. And this is very much aligned with what was mentioned already, the multi-hazard emergency response framework from PAHO. And this guidance describes in detail the methodology of developing the plan, but also what are the key components of such a plan. And that includes information on the country context, again, the risk profile that we get from risk and vulnerability analysis like the STAR process, but also information on the emergency management system, on the resources that the country has and can deploy during an emergency, including human resources, but also physical resources and emergency funds. And then also it describes how the health sector structures and organizes itself in an emergency response, including the different roles and responsibilities. And this, of course, applies to the national level, but equally to the subnational level and even down to the community level. WHO is promoting emergency preparedness and response planning in an all-hazard approach following this guidance. And of course, another lesson learned from the COVID-19 pandemic and also many other emergencies is how important is the joined up and coordinated multi-sector response. And that there are mechanisms in place that facilitate the decision-making on response actions beyond the health sector. For example, what was mentioned already as well in the opening remarks, measures that affect livelihood, businesses and economies, continuity of essential services, the education and transport sector, and quite a number of others. And a lot of mechanisms were established in an ad hoc manner during the COVID-19 response, but it's important that these mechanisms are developed prior to the emergency and are institutionalized so they can be used timely and effectively in the event of an emergency. And it's also important that now we analyze those mechanisms and innovations that were developed in the emergency, in the COVID pandemic, how we can apply them to future pandemics, but also emergencies from other hazards. One important approach to institutionalize this whole of society, and in particular the whole of government approach, is the linkage of the health with the disaster risk reduction institutions at the country as well as at the city level. This is the multi-sectoral coordination structure that is in place for societal natural hazards, but usually is not fully developed for biological hazards because the health sector is leading the response. So it's important that we explore and identify how we can best make use of these mechanisms in the pandemic response as well. And of course, this is what we are talking about, the whole of government approach. But when we talk about whole of society approach, we go well beyond government agencies, and we have to include the private sector, civil society, media, academia, etc., and down to the individual community members and many other stakeholders in this process. And this process has been defined in this operational guidance document that you can see on the screen, and I will share the link with you further after the presentation. And just to highlight a few aspects around implementing risk management at the local level. And this applies, of course, to the urban context, but also to other similar contexts that we are supporting countries in working on. And in this context, HEDRM focuses on strengthening the local health workforce capacities and the inclusive community-centered planning. And in particular, the community functions that WHO is offering support in are listed here. And many of these can be implemented through primary care and public health services and through joint actions with other sectors through the whole of society approach. Where we look at the local levels. At the local level, the linkages between health, education, transport, water, law enforcement, and emergency services. And these are often much more evident for people in communities than at the national level, because they are already implemented in many aspects of daily life. just to finish here, some other work streams that we are working on in supporting countries and cities in operationalizing the health CDRM framework. I won't be able to go into more details on these, but I know that some of them are also subject of the next presentations. And in particular, of course, highlighting the important role of health facilities in this context. And our colleague from PAHO will speak more about this important aspect. So I think, I hope this was a useful brief outline of the key risk management measures and approaches, and how we can leverage the lessons from COVID-19 to build risk-informed strategies and plans at the community level, which is a key factor to build resilience of health systems and protect communities in the urban setting. So I hand it back to you, Heini, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Kai, for this very informative presentation, providing WHO's guidance and our normative take to all hazard approach in emergency risk and preparedness work. There's quite lively discussion going on in the Q&A, but I just picked up a couple of comments from Maria Cara, who asks, is the risk communication being discussed in this context? And you just referred to the guidance and topics related to the community engagement. Perhaps you would like to elaborate a few words on these cross-cutting works that WHO is engaged in all emergency response related work. And there is another question from partner organization VACOS asking, could you elaborate how this all hazard approach compares to the single hazard approach? Is there an added value really from this all hazard approach compared to just single hazard approach? Would you like to get started with this, Kai?
Sure, thank you, Heini. So yeah, of course, risk communication and more broadly community engagement are one of the key components of risk management at the community level. And I think this is one of the main lessons learned from COVID-19 as well, that we cannot put enough emphasis on this aspect, how we can communicate the need for some of the interventions, and how we can engage with the community. And this has to be, of course, a dialogue that goes in both directions. And there has to be intensive listening to the priorities and the needs of the community. And this is why we are promoting these community-based risk assessments as well, where we try to incorporate and let the community guide us on their risk perception. Which then translates also into a more active role in the preparedness and response to emergencies, because we have to keep in mind that all emergencies begin and end at the community level. And communities are always the first responder, and usually they are always the ones that are there when the international responders have already moved on to the next emergency. That's why, I mean, that is our main focus in working at the subnational level. And when it comes to the benefits of the all hazard approach, I think that there's always value in both developing broad capacities that in an effective, cost-effective manner, given the background of limited resources available that cover a broad range of hazards. That's what we are seeing. And as I mentioned, there is what we see is a landscape of converging crisis where we almost are not able to respond to one single emergency anymore in one given place, but usually there are multiple concurrent emergencies ongoing. So usually what we estimate is that 80% of the response activities are generic and are similar to any kind of emergency, regardless of the hazard. And for these, we can prepare in a more cost-effective manner, because when we build capacities for those, they can be applied to any type of emergency. And then there's around 15% that are specific to each hazard. And of course, for those priority risks, we have to also develop capacities, hazard-specific plans, and also response capacities and procedures. But again, this is just building on the all-hazard generic planning and capacities that have been developed, because we have to keep in mind what we have seen in the last emergencies or what we see very frequently is or scenarios that even detailed risk assessments did not predict. Talking about monkeypox in non-endemic countries, etc. I think it's these responses to these emergencies are very difficult to prepare in a hazard-specific way. I think I leave it there.
Yeah, this is very thorough answers, Kai. Thanks for that. And there were a few other questions related to how to access these guidance documents. They are all on WHO's website, but we can also make sure that you will that we will share now in the learning platform that this program hosts a link list to all of these resources and tools, and this is all informed by evidence. So all of WHO's guidance comes out with they are produced through a robust, thorough evidence collection. So there's really a reason to refer these materials in your work. And there were similar questions from, for instance, from Shahad Sharif, who asks, does WHO country offices help in this work? How do countries implement this work? Would you just have at the country level, Kai, do you want to comment this, since you also have experience from working in the countries?
Yes, sure. And I think all our work here in headquarters and also at the regional level is really in supporting the country offices of WHO. They are the main interface that supports the country, the Ministry of Health is our main partner, but also the other stakeholders in the health sector. And what we are doing is really to providing support to their leadership. That's really the structure of the organization. And in most country offices where there is a specific risk profile in the country, of course, there's very dedicated and strong capacity around risk management and emergency preparedness in general.
Thanks, Kai. And if we can ask you to also browse through some of the interesting questions on the Q&A in particular, so you can also provide direct answer. There are a couple of question streams that seem to repeat. And I know you have answers to these questions. Many thanks for your sharing and expertise, Kai, and it's really nice to have you with us today. With this, we will move to the next session, which is on strengthening health emergency preparedness in cities and urban settings. And here now we will continue with the same type of thematics, but really focusing on cities and urban settings. And some of your questions related to how does the implementation on ground look like. I think colleagues Adam and Alex, who are going to present now in this next session, will also have very good examples to inform many of your questions that are running through in the Q&A list, but keep them coming. It also informs us, the organizers, to what kind of questions we need to prepare with our materials and in the future sessions. So now we'll hear from Mr. Adam Tiliouine, who's a technical officer in Health Security Preparedness Department of the WHO's headquarters. Adam is a technical officer and works in the unit of multi-sectoral engagement for health security and leads the work on urban health emergency preparedness. And this comes of particular interest, of course, for this training program, and we will get into the details through Adam's presentation. So the floor is yours, and thanks for joining.
Thank you very much, Heini, and hello to everybody. Good morning or good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. thanks very much to all the agencies that have worked together to put together this training program, which is I'm sure very useful and has been going on for a couple of years now. So it's a pleasure to join you today. I'm joining on behalf of Ludi Suriantoro, who's the unit head for multi-sectoral engagement for health security. I work within that unit, and I'm the technical officer focusing specifically on urban health emergency preparedness. So I'm going to give you a brief presentation on our work in that area. So we've had a great background and context already from my colleagues who have spoken earlier. So I'm not going to try my best not to repeat anything, but try to complement it and look at it from this perspective of the urban health emergency preparedness work that we're doing here from headquarters, but also working very closely with our 6 regional offices and country offices. So the urban environments, they have unique vulnerabilities and risk profiles, and we heard a little bit from Celso about the different characteristics: population density, congestion, acting as hubs for travel and trade, but also they have different characteristics that are physical and social as well. So I think that's something that we also need to think about, the different types of populations. We have mobile populations, we have groups at risk of vulnerability particularly, and we tend to find them concentrated in urban settings. Now the environments and their design, building local level capacities and integrating local and municipal authorities into ongoing national level health security preparedness activities are really critical in mitigating these risks. Given the importance to health security, national health security and emergency preparedness cannot be achieved without an enhanced focus on cities and urban settings. So this is really focusing and enhancing the focus on cities and urban settings is a contribution to our overall goal, which is the strengthening of national health security. So COVID obviously highlighted the unique challenges and opportunities that cities and urban settings face. And there were a high proportion of cases, deaths and community spread, but really this just highlighted what we know already. So it's not the first health emergency or pandemic or epidemic that has appeared in the urban setting. We had SARS, H1N1, there was MERS, Ebola in West Africa, Zika, just to name a few. And there are also many endemic diseases that need to be managed ongoing on a regular basis that include vector-borne diseases, food, waterborne diseases, zoonoses, and other respiratory diseases and others. But the idea is that in cities, we are really facing a huge number of risks, and the way that we deal with them has to be unique because of the characteristics of these urban environments. So WHO member states, they requested WHO enhances the focus on urban preparedness. In May of this year at the World Health Assembly, which is the governing body of WHO, a resolution was passed, 75.7, that focuses specifically on strengthening urban health emergency preparedness and response. And this was a topic that member states deemed to be of real importance, and there were co-sponsors from all 6 of WHO regions that really were driving this work. And the resolution itself was proposed and tabled by Singapore, who have really been championing this area of work. Now, this builds upon a previous resolution, which was really asking WHO to look at the unique vulnerabilities. So we started here a couple of years ago looking at the unique vulnerabilities of cities, and then we really moved on to this resolution, which is focused predominantly on working with a framework that I'm going to talk about in a moment. So there are a number of tools that are available that WHO have developed specifically on urban health emergency preparedness. The links are all here, so when the materials are shared, you'll be able to access them. There was a global technical working group which met 6 times last year on urban health emergency preparedness. It brought experts from countries from all 6 regions, from the national level, from the local level. It brought other technical experts from academia, from other partners as well. And they met and they discussed a number of key areas, and really the outcome of this working group was the framework for strengthening health emergency preparedness in cities and urban settings. And this is what I'll go into more detail about. And there's also an accompanying operational guidance that's for both national and local authorities. So these are the two overarching documents which the organization developed with the countries as an outcome of these expert discussions. There are also a couple of COVID-specific documents and tools. So there's a guidance that's just for local authorities, and it's also accompanied by a practical checklist. So this tool can be downloaded directly off the WHO website and taken to your cities and urban settings and applied. So we started off that these were during the COVID-19 outbreak, and then we built upon those to create these global, more broad framework and guidance documents. And there are also a couple of partnerships which we're working with as well. There's the Global Prepared Cities Platform for Health Emergency Preparedness. This is something in development. The idea is for it to serve as a platform for local and national authorities to come together to exchange best practice, to exchange experience and knowledge on preparedness, and then also work together in terms of piloting different activities and sharing expertise, including actual deployment of experts. And this would be something that would be done through the Global Sustainable Preparedness Network. So this GSPN is a broader platform that's already existing. It's on preparedness more broadly, but the actual deployment of technical experts to support cities and countries in urban preparedness would be done through this mechanism. So we're really trying to use these platforms to bring together the experience and the knowledge which exists all over the world from lived experience, basically, and see how we can use our convening function as WHO to help build the capacities in different places. And there are also, of course, many other tools from WHO that are not specifically on urban preparedness, but can be applied in the urban setting or can be adapted to build the capacities at the urban setting. So there's the resource mapping. Kai has just spoken about the strategic toolkit for assessing risks. There are One Health tools, multi-sectoral preparedness, simulation exercise reviews, and others. So this is the framework which I spoke about, which was the key outcome of the working group. So it builds upon these two COVID-19 documents which I mentioned earlier, and it actually targets policymakers in all sectors in a whole of society approach at both the national and subnational levels, as well as stakeholders within the international community. So it looks beyond WHO and the traditional health sector actors, really trying to see how we can work together in a multi-sectoral manner in this area. So I just talk a little bit about the framework itself. This graphic is really summing up the framework. It covers the role of cities and urban settings in emergency preparedness. It identifies 8 key areas that should be strengthened in cities and urban settings. I'll talk more about them in a minute. And it covers the intrinsic linkages and interdependencies between, like I mentioned before, what's happening at the local level and what's happening at the national level. So the idea is, you can see here in the blue box, we're talking about the key areas at the local level. Now they're obviously interchangeable and contributing and happening concurrently, the focus and the work around these areas as what's going on at the national level. And then together, through the activities that you see on the right-hand side, which here they're grouped into these 4 areas, contributes to the overall goal, which is the health security and emergency preparedness strengthened at the national level. Here you can see that it's really emphasizing the need for building subnational capacities in addition to national level. So I know I'm laboring this point, but it's really important to sort of stress that this is done to complement all of the fantastic work going on in member states at the national level. So the framework identifies these 8 key areas that were born out of the discussions and consultations. And the idea is that focusing on and addressing these areas will contribute to improving overall health emergency preparedness. So depending on the local context and needs, countries and cities, they may prioritize different key areas of the framework, giving greater attention to some than others. And this, of course, should be informed by the best available data and evidence, risk assessment using other tools such as the STAR tool presented by Kai, and other health emergency and preparedness ongoing, and also disaster risk reduction activities. The framework, it looks at the importance of governance and financing for health emergency preparedness. This is whole of government and whole of society approaches. It notes that the challenges of multi-level governance, coordination between the national and local levels. One of the key points that stem from the working group discussions is that urban preparedness must be a priority at the highest level of government. It's including heads of state and relevant ministers. But this political commitment alone is not enough, and it must be accompanied by dedicated and sustainable investment and funding. And it also looks at different challenges, including emergency governance issues, mandates, accountability lines, and also the existence and implementation of the appropriate oversight mechanisms. It looks through multi-sectoral coordination because, as Kai spoke to very nicely, obviously emergency preparedness in cities extends far beyond the health sector. And also, this is also a different group of actors at the urban level than you will also have at the national level. Sometimes it's even more because you have many different actors working in and contributing through many different means. So it looks at the challenges also stemming from high population density. This is public transportation networks, but also the role of cities as hubs of travel, of trade, of economy, of service delivery, and the associated critical importance of urban planning in urban preparedness. And this includes informal living arrangements and settlements, the movement of people, of points of entry, and also mass gathering events. It looks at community.
Sorry, just to say, can you just speak a little bit slowly so that interpretation can follow? I know you're very enthusiastic of the topic, but just little slowly so the interpretation can follow. Thanks so much.
Yes, of course. No, my apologies. I was looking at the time and rushing.
You have time. I've just granted you a bit more time, so you can.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I apologize. So it looks at community engagement and risk and crisis communication. And this is really about the challenges of diversity within a city. And it's the importance of ensuring we have targeted and contextually appropriate risk and crisis communication. And also, for instance, explores issues around infodemics and infodemic management, which is something that we all are very familiar with, especially stemming from COVID-19. So it details the importance of working with urban communities and specifically their groups most at risk of vulnerability, and that it's key to increased resilience and successful all-hazard risk management, including preparing for health emergencies. So we really need to be working from the outset, from the beginning of the process, right through to the end of the process with groups at risk of vulnerability. It also covers the importance of city authorities in mapping vulnerabilities because they often are the closest level of government to the people. So they know where the vulnerabilities exist and where these people are, and also recognizing and addressing structural inequalities and the role of both national and local authorities in addressing these. Under data, evidence, and information, it focuses on the critical need to build capacity for collecting and using local data, something that's often lacking. It looks at data gaps, which are a pertinent issue, including governance issues in their collection, the use and the retention of data. And also key to successful urban preparedness is the role of communities in gathering data, such as community surveillance data, which is something that's also touched upon in the framework. Also looks at generating evidence and the challenges of misinformation and the relationship with evidence as well. The private sector, so commerce, industry, and business have a key role to play. Here, it stems from contributions to logistics, operations, but also capacity, service delivery. And also then we have to look at the importance of accountability and governance mechanisms that facilitate appropriate engagement. And the role of local enterprises and large corporations will differ. So the way that we engage with them needs to differ, but both can really contribute to urban preparedness when they're managed appropriately. And the final area of the 8 is on organization and delivery of health and other essential services. So this looks at health systems, looks at health system resilience, universal healthcare, delivery of services, and also the role of services beyond health, including critical infrastructure, so ensuring continuity of service delivery. So I'm at the end, I won't take very long here, but basically the resolution has been approved, and we are now working very closely with all of the 6 regions in terms of getting the priorities for their region, and scaling up the work in a few different ways. So how we can support the implementation of the framework and of the guidance through collaborations with other tools, through piloting activities, through the development of the global preparedness cities platform that I mentioned. We're also looking at really documenting and disseminating best practices and challenges, opportunities. This is something that came out very, very clearly in the working group discussions, that a lot of the challenges faced are very similar for cities all over the world. Also, we have to look at it in terms of the size of cities as well. So mega cities in one part of the world will be facing very similar challenges to mega cities in other parts of the world, but very different challenges to much smaller urban environments. And we're also looking at this enhancing the existing partnerships, as well as developing new partnerships. But it's really leveraging what we have and working. You know, there are partners that are working at the international level and local level that we are working very closely with, and seeing how we can use these platforms and really support the countries in their request to build a capacity at the local level and enhance the integration of local authorities into national health security and emergency preparedness activities. So I'm done. I apologize for going so quickly, but the presentation will be shared with all of the materials, and very happy to answer any questions that you may have. So I'll go back to you, Heini. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Adam, and thanks for sharing this excellent presentation, which gives kind of a justification also for levels of work, like that while the member states and national governments are the bodies in health emergency preparedness, there is clearly a strong take with the levels of administration to cities, to communities, to be involved in this work. And this is the case in many countries. And you presented very nicely the Health Assembly resolution on the topic. Do you also, can you elaborate on some examples how this can turn, the Assembly resolution, how can that turn into the practical implementation in the countries and in the local level? There was a question on this.
Yes, absolutely. So what the resolution focuses on, it's a very tight and technically sort of short and sweet resolution, and it's really focusing on implementing the framework that I spoke to, and also the operational guidance. So some sort of specific activities that are included in there are that countries and cities can look at perhaps conducting simulation exercises or after action reviews following outbreaks or emergencies that have occurred and affected their cities, or intra-action reviews, which are currently done in the midst of the COVID-19 outbreaks, but also can be applied to other outbreaks. So on the one hand, it looks at very specific actions like that. On the other hand, it really is a tool that is also very important for the political advocacy. So the tool, the resolution, it asks member states to ensure that health emergency preparedness in cities and urban settings is really at the highest level of the political agenda. And this is really important. It's saying that we can't sink into this panic and then forget cycle, which unfortunately happens so often with health emergencies, where in the midst of responding to the pandemic such as COVID, it's at the top of the agenda, but then suddenly, once we start to move into other latter steps of the emergency cycle, it's then not so important. So the resolution is really important on a political level from an advocacy perspective, but then also facilitating the implementation of some sort of key discrete technical activities.
this is very nice summary of your session, Adam, and there are actually quite a lot of questions in the stream, in particular in the Q&A, asking, are there language versions of all of these guidance documents? Where can one access these? So we will make sure that all these materials will be disseminated in the learning platform that supports this program. So links are there in the presentations. WHO aims to produce all formal normative guidance documents in UN languages. Sometimes the translation work takes a bit time. There are hundreds of normative guidance documents coming out for each area of work of WHO, and it takes a bit of time. So not all of the materials might be available immediately in all UN languages, but the aim is there to always publish in UN languages. So you may visit, for instance, for the STAR toolkit, there was a specific question how to find more information on the STAR process, that the toolkit that Kai mentioned. There is a whole website, and the guidance document is there together with the toolkit. So these kind of materials can be revisited in WHO's website, but we will make sure that that links to these resources are there. I personally just always Google around and look for materials that I need from WHO myself, and I tend to find them, but it's sometimes navigating the complexity. Really thanks, Adam, for this session, and if you also want to take a look on some of the Q&As and answer them directly, that will be very nice. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
And thanks, and lovely to have you here. And now we'll go to the third session of this training event today, and this is about the resilient hospitals in cities. And we have a pleasure to welcome Dr. Alex Camacho Vasconez, who's a medical surgeon by education and the regional advisor on emergency preparedness and disaster risk reduction in the Health Emergencies Department of the Pan American Health Organization, PAHO. And Dr. Camacho has 24 years of combined experience from national and international levels in emergency and disaster management, including a very specific knowledge related to the management of health emergencies, disability inclusion, and disaster risk reduction at national and international levels. And Dr. Alex has been lecturing in this series in the past years, and we're really enthusiastic that you've been able to also allocate time this year, and look forward to your presentation. So handing over to you, Alex.
Thank you so much, Heini. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Please allow me just to share my screen. Thank you. Are you able to see it, Heini?
Yes, very nicely. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. First of all, congratulations to the previous panelists, and definitely in what still we need to do in terms of urban resilience is a big challenge for all of us. And again, I also want to thank our team, Celso, Mariana, Maria, Juan Carlos, and Heini, who has supported us in this process. For today, we'll prioritize the interaction with you. So I kindly ask you, please, to join at slido.com through your mobile phones. The code passes PAHO, so you can use the QR code as well. My colleague Juan Carlos will be also sharing with you the link through the chat, so you can access directly to it. And so first, please open the internet browser on your mobile phone. Access to the following website, slido.com. Please third ingress, go to you can use the code PAHO. It doesn't matter if it's capital on letters or not, it's okay. And let's interact with you. As we have been trying to have very specific questions in all the languages. So please, it will be very useful to have all of you on board If you can please join us, it will be very, very important so we can interact, and also you can contribute to this process that is, I will say, very old word, resilience, but also still in something that we still need to work, and your contribution will be more than appreciated. And as I said again, please join us to slido.com. PAHO will be able to participate. This is how you will see in your screen. Please add the code PAHO. And your screen, you will be able to see the Q&A and the polls. You can use the Q&A, but I would prefer that you can prioritize through the Zoom. And we will be using the polls for today. In the polls, you'll be able to write your answers. Please be very specific by the time they're writing it. You can write it in your own language. It doesn't matter if it's English or Spanish, Portuguese, Arabic, Chinese, it's okay. The important part of this is that we'll be collecting this information and also sharing with your colleagues, with WHO, with UNDRR, UNOSSC, who have done a really great job on this. So let's interact. And please tell us, which country are you in now? Where are you located right now? ¿En qué país estás hoy? ¿En qué país se encuentra agora? Dans quel país de tu vos mantén? So very nice to see a lot of people, more than 100 people engaging right now from all around the world. And why I wanted to do this, because this joint training certificate has been really a good experience to have a lot of people from all the world. And also we are learning a lot from you, from Philippines, from Costa Rica, from Trinidad and Tobago, from Iran, from Thailand, from Spain, from Uganda, from Mexico, from Bangladesh, from Ecuador, my country, from Germany, from Nigeria, from Argentina, from Venezuela, from Italy, from Cuba, from Brazil, from Pakistan, from RDC, from Bhutan, from Suriname, from Lebanon, from Sierra Leone. So it's really amazing seeing all of you interacting through this platform. And I'm really taking at least 6 of my 27 minutes, because the most important part of this session will be your contribution, your interaction, since resilience is really a matter of all of us. It's a topic that all of us have to be involved. Okay, so we have more than 300 participants engaged, so we are now be able to move to the next question. So in a word, what is your field of work? Please tell us. You are from the health sector, you are from the academia, from education, you are maybe from cities, municipalities. And yes, we do have, as you can see, salud, academia, from the planning sector, for urban planner, from spatial planning, from peace, from the government sector, from medicine, from financial education. So it also shows us the diversity that we have had in this training certificate course. It's really amazing. And why also it's so important, because all of you from all the sectors are part of the health, of the public health. And also all of you play an important role by the time that we have to prepare response or recovery from health emergencies and disasters as well. Now the next one is if we will say, if you will have to choose from one of the critical infrastructure, which one is the most important for you? Maybe schools, hospitals, sanitary infrastructure, maybe transportation. What is the most important and critical area for you when we are talking, of course, about resilience? So many of you said hospitals, yes. Also, we do have education as well, water, electricity, sanitation. Yeah, all of these areas play an important and key role when we are talking about urban resilience. And we are talking resiliency and cities as well. Thank you. Thank you so much for your contribution. And please, you can continue interacting as well. And I'm really, really happy to see almost 400 people interacting lively from all around the world. And thank you to you. So let's go to the topic. Please take in consideration that the interactions that we are going to do now are not part of the test, but we'll prepare you a lot for this. So as you know, the Sendai framework outline has 7 global targets to be achieved, 4 of them to substantial reduction and 3 of them to substantial increase. I will highlight the reduction on mortality, affected people, and of course also economic loss. But one of critical aspects that we are talking today is how can we also reduce the disaster damage to critical infrastructure and disruption of basic services, especially health services, of course. And as I was saying, the target D call us to reduce disaster damage to critical infrastructure. And within the target D, we do have 2 specific indicators that target the health sector, that is the destroyed or damaged health facilities, and the importance to reduce the number of health services interruption attributed to disasters. But remember, we had also a very important role on this indicator when the COVID-19 pandemic was hitting a lot all around the world. So these are the 4 priorities for action of the Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction that was launched on 2015. Understanding risk, strengthening disaster risk management to better manage disaster risk, invest in disaster risk reduction for resilience, and improve disaster preparedness for effective response and recovery. And why I'm calling to these 4 priorities, because we have to be very focused to know that these 4 priorities are guiding us to 2030 to achieve not only Sendai Framework for Disaster Risk Reduction, but also Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 2030, and other frameworks as well, as we do have, for example, in the Americas, the Sustainable Development Goals Agenda for 2030, where the objective 8 is part of it as a very important part of an emergency preparedness as well. So please join us the quiz. Now we'll have a quiz. Write your name, please, and it will help us to see how quickly can you respond. And of course, we will have a prize that you can pick up at Heini's office in WHO, maybe in Panama, I don't know, wherever you can find them. You can find her. Okay, so we have, we'll wait until 200 more people maybe. So, and the idea of this is to have a very critical view. How can the priorities of Sendai Framework have to be highlighted by the time that we are planning resilient in urban settings, but focus also in hospital? That is the matter of our presentation today. So, ready? We have Maulina, Ashley, Joseph, Hamed, and let's start. So, which of the Sendai Framework priorities is more related to resilient hospitals? Priority 1, priority 2, priority 3, priority 4. Which of the Sendai Framework's priority is more related to resilient hospitals? Please. Let's have your answers. Okay, but priority 1, priority 2, 16%. We're still having some time to respond. You still can respond so far. Okay, so congratulations to Anne. She responded in 10 seconds. In fact, all the 4 priorities are completely related. Of course, when we see investing in resilience by priority 3, you will say, yeah, this must be the one. But in fact, priority 1, recognizing disaster risk, understanding the risk, having a good risk assessment, it's a key. Governance play a key role. And of course, investment is very, very important as well. But not only everything is about investment. Also, a better preparedness for response and recovery is a key as well. Congratulations to Gisela, Adrián, and Murilla, and Afghan as well. So, and that's why I'm calling this few concepts, just to highlight the importance of prospective disaster risk management. And as you know, disaster risk management is the application of disaster risk reduction policies and strategies to prevent new disaster risk, right? Reducing existing disaster risk and managing residual risk, also contributing to the strengthening of resilience and reduction of disaster losses. The prospective disaster risk management activities address and seek to avoid development of new or increased disaster risk. They focus on addressing disaster risk that may develop in future if disaster risk reduction policies are not put in place. Examples are better land use planning or disaster-resistant water supply systems, and also, of course, what plays a very important role in cities, and this is a message for you, is the regulation and the compliance of construction codes, specifically, of course, in health infrastructure. This is an example. What you can see here is, I'm sorry for that. What you can see here is a volcano that is located in one of the countries in South America. This is a great area. And in this area, not far from about maybe 30-40 kilometers, was constructed a hospital, 2 hospitals, by the way, that are located 100 meters from the river side. And this is another map where you can see very clearly where is the river. And not only was the hospital, but also the Red Cross headquarters in that city. Here is the river, of course. And this hospital had an investment of $45 million. So what do we do in terms of prospective disaster risk management? The idea is if this hospital is in a prone disaster area, if that volcano erupts, and we'll have a lot of lahars and maybe some other challenges with lava and so on. Of course, this hospital will be destroyed and very critical infrastructure will be destroyed. So the question for you is, what will have done you before this? Of course, urban planning, not allowing the hospital to be constructed here, not even the Red Cross that plays an important role in humanitarian response. But what if the hospital is already constructed? What can we do? And this is maybe one of the situation in most of the hospitals in America. So maybe sometimes the infrastructure needs retrofitting or critical infrastructure or the relocation of exposed population or assets. So in the prospective disaster risk management, the idea is to prevent, to avoid that risk can appear. But if it's already there, so we still have maybe the chance to retrofit or to robust or maybe to relocate or to do some actions so we can mitigate the risk. So corrective disaster risk management goes related to mitigation. Remember that. But also now we have the concept, you have heard building back better. What does it mean build back better? Not only reconstruction, but also retrofitting. When we are working on retrofitting, for example, this is an example, a very good example in the Caribbean with the Smart Hospital project, where you can retrofit it and you can build back better, not only with the structural part, but also making it green. So safe and green, and we'll see it later. So that is a way how retrofitting can be done in a very good way. But we do have residual risk as well. So if we are not able to prevent nor to mitigate, so we have to compensate that residual risk. And that takes us to preparedness and response and recovery activities. And that is where hospital resilience also plays a key role. But resiliency in hospitals is not only preparedness. It has a comprehensive disaster and emergency risk management cycle, as you can see here. It goes in preparedness from planning to evaluation and improvement. It means also that the exercising part is a really a key part of that. And when we are addressing health emergency and disaster risk management, as Kay said, we have to see it with an all-hazard approach in a multi-level and also with a very important multi-sectoral coordination. And I will say that for resiliency in hospitals, it plays a very important role. But what is resilient hospitals? And this is something that we have been talking for a while. After COVID-19, of course, it has taken a lot of importance as well, but you have heard maybe resilience in every aspect of the disaster risk management areas. Let's try to focus a little bit in hospitals. And I will say that resilience is as old or older as this old typewriter is. But the significance of this slide is that the topic of resilience is still under construction. It has a lot of room for improvement. And it's something that we need to work from the academia to the government sector, NGOs, and so on. And I am convinced that the countries, with the support of WHO, PAHO, UNDRR, UNOSSC, especially, there is a lot to do. And there is a lot to do, and it has been done a lot, for example, in the WHO Eastern Mediterranean office that are moving in a great project forward and an uncertain piece as PAHO is. And I want to share this information that my colleagues from EMRO, from WHO shared, and the challenges in conceptualizing hospital resilience. I saw some of the questions, and let me tell you, it's not an easy task, because there is a lack of comprehensive conceptual and operational framework within the context with very limited operationalization. So everybody's talking about resilience in a way as robustness, toughness, elasticity, adaptability, emergency, preparedness, management, perseverance, and so on, resulting in outcomes, attributes, intermediate objectives, and so on. But also using inputs, domain, factors, areas, categories, components, elements, dimensions, buildings, and a lot. There is new and young topic in literature. There were a lot of 74% of articles that included what I just have said. And there was also a very important systematic review on health system resilience that is, let's say, an umbrella for this. And we are talking about these colleagues that you are hearing now. Please, let's be practical on this. So our resilient hospitals contribute to the reduction of the negative effects on people's health caused by emergencies and disasters. We are agreeing on that. The reduction of damage to health infrastructure and the disruption of health services and recovery, of course, from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. I will say that it's very important to say and to highlight because all the importance that we have seen. But when we are talking about resilient health, resilient hospitals, resilient health facilities, those that are able to resist, assimilate, adapt, and recover from the impact of an health. As I was saying, that are able to adapt and recover from the impact of a health emergency or disaster, regardless of its origin. That means multi-hazard approach in its magnitude or intensity in a timely and efficient manner by preserving and restoring their structures and functions through integrated risk management, leaving no one behind. Resilient hospitals must resist. The facility must be built or reinforced structurally safe to protect the lives of the occupants at all times. And it's very important to consider that its architectural elements like liveness, supplies, and equipment must remain functional during and after the impact of the adverse event. Assimilate, so that means the organization must implement preparedness and readiness actions for response and early recovery. Adapt, that the facility, the health facility and personnel have to interact to expand or recovery capabilities in anticipation of an increase in demand of medical care, but also recover as quickly as possible in a planned manner through protocols and procedures for early recovery. And what are the most immediate and primary outcomes of resilient hospitals? Save lives, maintain functions, that mean the delivery of health services, and of course, protect the investment. That's very important also for the private and the health sector and the public sector due to the huge investment that it involves. So please join me again at slido.com, come back to slido.com, and please tell us how would you measure a hospital's resilience? That was a key question that someone was saying, is there a scorecard for measuring hospital resilience? Well, let me tell you that it's not that easy. It's a little bit complicated, but I will say that it's something that is needed. So we have the idea on this one was to prioritize what will you put first once by its preparedness level, once its response and recovery have been tested. Yes, also using a specific index. Yeah, would be good. Also through the response plan. So most of the people agree that it's by its preparedness level. And yes, we do find in the literature that most of the studies are concentrated in preparedness, but it goes beyond of preparedness. It involves a comprehensive disaster risk management. But what is the challenge of this prioritization? How do you prioritize what you have to do first? Are you hospital managers? If some hospital managers listen to me, they'll say, no, guys, this is impossible. I do have a bunch of priorities in my hospital. Maybe lack of supplies, medicines, or some other problems. Please tell me, how can I prioritize the interventions that I have to do? And that's why we came to think, what are the impacts of health resilience? Health security, for sure, universal health coverage, I have said, to guarantee delivery of health services, but also disaster risk reduction, and some other things like reduction of carbon footprint, inclusion, equity, and so on. But the main one of these should be saving lives. If a hospital collapses, being green, inclusive, trying to have a universal coverage will be really not as important as saving lives. If the hospital collapsed, if the people died, if the healthcare workers died, the patient died, we are not talking about anything. So we have to be concrete on this. And the problems also around hospital or resilience in general, there is a lot of philosophy. We need to do this and that. But okay, tell me, how can we implement? And this is really one of the challenges. So, and that's why I'm calling you also this question. What is the base for resilience? La base para la resiliencia hospitalaria es, what is the base for resilience? Structural, non-structural safety and disaster risk management, coping capacity, maybe. What is the most important one for you? The level of disaster preparedness, the recovery capacity. What is the base for this? If you have to prioritize, what would you say after what I have said before? What will you prioritize? Yeah, most of you are saying structural and non-structural safety and disaster risk management. So you are meaning that the hospital first at all have to be safe. And I will say that yes, but it has to come hand to hand with an appropriate hospital risk assessment, where you can be able to see what are your risks and what you will prioritize in terms of hospital safety as well, in the non-structural, structural, and disaster risk management component. And then, of course, depending on your risk assessment, something that is a must, you have to work for people with disabilities and inclusion, and for indigenous people as well, considering their culture and their diversity as well aspects. But of course, we do need also tools for incident command system in hospitals, for expanding capacities, for evacuating if the structure is not good as we expect. And of course, we need to work on reducing carbon footprint. And maybe we'll need a rapid assessment tool by the time that disaster strikes in the hospital as well. And of course, recovery tools, very easy and friendly tools. And so you can react, evaluate, and take decisions as soon as possible. That's the thing. You have to take decisions based on the most reliable and evidence information that you may have. But also, we do have a lot of other tools like infection prevention, control, response, reduction, and recovery, and also the importance of emergency training standards that are a key. So what we did in the region in terms of strengthening hospital resilience, but first to develop, to work in risk assessment and the exposure, and knowing the exposure, the specific exposure in the Americas were really was really a key. So we were able to assess, to study a lot of about 20,000 health facilities in the country, knowing if they were small, big, medium, if they had hospital, if had intensive care unit, emergency rooms, and so on, but specifically to know to what natural hazard they were exposed. So we were able to cross with several methodologies from University of Columbia, NSA, and some others, and with the information that we gathered from the countries, knowing from the last 2 centuries what was the frequency, and also how important were, for example, hurricanes in the region, and for example, in the Caribbean. Someone was asking, and by the way, that by the time that you make a risk assessment, you will have very specific information, not only in natural disaster, of course, because it's very important also to gather information regarding what has happened in terms of pandemics as well in the COVID-19, give us a lot of information, but also the idea was to have very clear, and it's really important that you can do this in your cities specifically, to know what specifically is the level of exposure, how exposed are your health facilities to natural hazards and other kind of hazards as well. As an example, in the Americas, we do have more than 20,000 facilities that were assessed. From this, we found out that 40.8% of hospitals have a high level of exposure. So it means if you have to prioritize in a city, you will see, okay, what are the hospitals that are in the exposition level of 8 to 10? So that means that that may be one criteria to intervene in. I will share, I'll ask Juan Carlos, please, to share also in the chat the link to the hazard exposure. We are running out of the time, and Heini is now chasing me with this, and I will move quickly to finalize this. So what we did is to adapt the STAR tool that Kay was mentioning, and we call it STAR Age. So the idea is to have a very friendly tool to assess hospital facilities, so we can have very clear what are the level of risk, what are the main risks that the hospital may that may occur in the hospitals, internal and external. That's very important to mention. And of course, you will prioritize contingency planning, you will prioritize interventions, structural, non-structural. But it also links very clear with the safety hospital index, the hospital safety index. And this is a very important tool because it links and gives you what is the level of vulnerability in terms of structural, non-structural, and disaster risk management part as well. I will say that I will say that you have to do a risk assessment and a hospital safety index assessment as the first step. And it goes hand to hand. It's part of the same process. It links very well. But also remember that we do have a bunch of toolkits, not only in the Americas, but also in all the WHO regions, like the Smart Hospital Toolkit that put together the safe and green component with a green checklist, also with a baseline audited tool to know how efficient can you reduce the consumption of water, electricity, and some others. And remembering again, colleagues, from cities, if you are doing efforts and developing, constructing tools with your health authorities, please, there must be easy and friendly user. So you don't need those experts maybe from other agencies to help you. You have to, of course, we can support you in all of this. One of the interventions and the methodologies that we are really proud to have developed is the INGRID-H, that is Disability Inclusion in Hospital Disaster Risk Management. It goes hand by hand also in terms of what we are calling. You cannot be resilient if you are not inclusive. You are not resilient if you are not if you don't provide good accessibility for persons with disability, if they don't participate in the process and so on. But also your hospital must be ready to organize the response. Yes, we do recommend the incident command system in hospital. We do have a training that will be soon available in the virtual campus in English as well, and we will proceed with other languages hopefully. And it is really a key component by the time of organizing the response. You may be able to find in the literature. I really like one specifically from Dr. Jennifer Musso, who is focused on health resilient systems in terms of pandemics and natural disasters. And one of the key aspects that systematic review highlights that some 16 areas, specifically one of them that is, I think it's a key, that is leadership. And leadership also recalls to the importance to work on coordination, risk communication, among others. And we are developing also, we are on the way also to work and also the need of tools like the PAHO Search Age tool that is focused on expansion of hospital capacity, and evacuation specific tools from critical areas specifically. And as I was mentioned, some other tools that are available for rapid health facility assessment, those kind of assessments that you have to do it in 5 minutes to decide if it's safe or not to stay in the hospital, if you have to evacuate, or also for authorities to take decisions what are the key priorities in terms of early recovery if it happens. We do have a lot of countries with a violent context, and there is also some tools that can help us in that matter, like the Violence Rapid Preparedness Assessment in Health Facility tool. And I will, for finalizing this, I will show you an example. This is the Hospital Chateaubriand in San Vincent and the Grenadines. This is before the intervention of PAHO in the government of San Vincent and the Grenadines to supporting the government of San Vincent and Grenadines in the Smart Hospital project. So with the interventions that I mentioned before, through the Smart Hospital toolkit, and roof and walls were strengthened, and rainwater harvesting, solar panels were installed, the hospital was made accessible, and so on. And this is the Hospital Chateaubriand after the retrofitting process, after the Smart Hospital intervention. Safe and green. And remember, the most important part, I will say, from our perspective, from our point of view, after we have seen the literature, is that a hospital first must be safe. It has to be sustainable. Yes, it has to be safe, sustainable. But first, it has to be safe. It has to be inclusive. Yes, it has to be inclusive. It has to guarantee universal health coverage, of course. And working towards health security, yes. But first, it has to be safe. Otherwise, we are talking about philosophy, and it goes to nowhere. So a good example of a resilient hospital is this one. Because after the Hospital Chateaubriand was hit by the volcano eruption of the La Soufrière volcano in December 2020, first, there were no deaths or injuries, so it was safe. It never stopped health services provision, so working towards universal health coverage or guaranteeing the provision of health services. There were no damages, and it provided water to community for 72 hours after this disaster. But also because we were in the middle of the pandemic, it was one of the COVID-19 vaccination centers. And also it was hit by some hurricanes later on. So it's a very good example of what a hospital resilience is. So please, colleagues, share with us what other methodologies will you add to this process. What else are you doing over there? If you want to share, please share with us. That it's open the floor for you. 8 participants I type in. So you will find in the following months, and by the early 23, we hope, a web page, a site that will be called Resilient Hospitals in the Americas. That will be also linked to the World Health Organization tools, hopefully also with the colleagues in Embro and other regions as well, where you will be able to find all the information regarding hospitals, Resilient Hospital program, but also will give you the opportunity to interact and also to be part of this construction process, as I was typewriting in my old typewriter before. So thank you so much for all of this. Yes, and you are right. GIS data is very important. Risk assessment for sure. We are working on that. Community awareness, that is a key part, especially in the primary health level and so on. So since I'm running all the time, very briefly, I will say that if we will go step by step in the implementation of hospital resilience, yeah, we do have to involve the hospital authorities in the process. We have to make the people participate. If the healthcare workers, if the community, if the multi-sectoral sector is not part of it, it doesn't work. And as a key intervention is risk assessment. Risk assessment as a first and key action to define what are your priorities. If you are trying to do 151 item checklist and to think that the managers will do that, no, it doesn't work. They won't do it because they have so many things to do. So it has to be prioritized in terms of what? Of your risk, because you are also working for disaster risk reduction. Preparedness, of course, working on coping capacity, working also in a multi-hazard approach through hospital planning, the sustainability that I think it's a key and will save you a lot of money as well, but also testing, and also monitoring, and then it's a continuing process to work with. Thank you again to Celso, to Juan Carlos, to May, to all the teams, to Mariana specifically, and to all the teams, to all the people that have worked. Please join us at PAHO Emergencies on Twitter. That will be very useful for you finding some of the tools that we have talked today. Thank you so much, and I'm very honored to be with you in this time. And thank you for your collaboration. Thank you for your participation for this. Thanks.
Thank you, Alex. And there is an overwhelming gratitude in the chat and in the channels here for your presentation. It's been very well received. And thank you also running it interactively. You gathered great data while you interacted through the slide. This was really nice. And today what we've really done from the World Health Organizations and the Pan American Health Organization side is to go through the key concepts for these elements of disaster risk management, health emergency preparedness, and now really coming into the practice and the level of work where most of the difference happens, namely in the safe and resilient hospital. So Alex, this was really a great highlight for the session today. Thanks for that. And we are no longer opening the questions since you had so much already interaction, but committed to sharing all of the materials with all participants of this program. And we have the site, the learning platform that all of you have logged into. Please go there to check for the materials of this session, also for the videos. They will be posted there as soon as we finish and get them uploaded, together with all other relevant materials. And since there were so many questions about the certificate program, about this 4-week program, I would like to just mention that we will require that the participant has finished 3 out of 4 sessions. So only with completion of having joined live 3 out of 4 sessions, you can get the certificate. Given also that you have finished the final exam that comes live after next week's session, and there will be a survey as well. For those later in the year who want to complete this program, there will be an Open WHO course hosted with the same contents and materials that we've now seen during these 3 plus 1 more session next week. So there's also a chance to obtain a certificate later through the openwho.org platform, where we are working to produce this material as a course. This will be a self-paced course later on. So many thanks for joining today. We've had great experts, Dr. Celso, Dr. Kai, Dr. Alex, and Mr. Adam today with us, and we look forward hosting next session, the final session next week, and this will be a very interesting closing session where we are looking at the city level impacts and innovative practices in response to public health emergency and disaster risk management. And we have a really experienced board of speakers also next time. So we look forward to meeting you then. And meanwhile, on Monday, we all should celebrate the International Day for South-South collaboration and celebrate this by posting links to UN Office on South-South collaboration sites as much as we can, and join in celebrations of this very day of South-South collaboration. With this, thank you once again for interpreters and for all organizers from the 4 organizations for having made this event happen, and we look forward exchanging with you in different platforms and work with you and support the work at countries and local levels and cities and urban settings in the future. Many thanks, and the session is over. Thank you. Have a nice day and stay safe.